Good afternoon, and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome, and if you're returning, welcome back. First off, let's do some housekeeping. We have some newly designed merch in the store, and channel membership that gets you exclusive content and your content first. And if you could like this video and comment with your thoughts down below, that would be so appreciated as it helps the channel to grow. With that being said, today we'll be looking at 3 more cold cases that were solved with DNA. Let's get into it. Number 1. Nova Welsh. On July 27, 1981, in Birmingham, UK, Nova Welsh stopped answering her phone. The 24-year-old mother of 2 had recently separated from her husband, Osmond Bell, and it was very unlike her to disappear. The day of her disappearance, she had dropped off her children with her ex-husband and went out dancing with her new boyfriend, Wayne Newby, and a group of friends. A neighbor said that she had returned that evening but appeared upset. Neighbors interviewed in the following days of her disappearance noted that they had heard crying and fighting coming from Nova's apartment. This, unfortunately, was a regular occurrence as her ex-husband had been known to be violent and abusive to Nova throughout their relationship. Nova's parents and siblings had just immigrated to Miami, Florida, and her mother, Lorna, became increasingly distressed that she couldn't get a hold of her daughter. They had hoped that Nova would bring her children and join them in the U.S. Nova and her family were very close. The family had immigrated to the U.K. from Jamaica in 1957. At 16, Nova got into a relationship with Osmond Bell and moved out to live with him when she became pregnant with her first child. She had recently escaped the relationship, kicking her abusive spouse out of their home, and she was rebuilding her life without him. They had only been separated for a few weeks when she disappeared. Bell was interviewed before the discovery of her body. He hadn't reported her missing, claiming to officers that he just assumed she had run away with her new boyfriend or visited her family in the U.S. Without evidence, police were forced to release Bell. On August 18, 1981, there was a discovery made in the building Nova lived in. Residents began reporting a terrible smell coming from somewhere in the building. Officers were dispatched, and in a utility closet, they discovered Nova's body, covered in a blanket and newspapers. Bell was arrested and held for 4 days while they did their initial investigation. Her autopsy showed that her cause of death had been a broken neck. Police had received a letter from a witness claiming that they had seen Welsh fighting with a man who clearly wasn't Osmond in her kitchen. Police asked if Bell knew anything about the author of the letter, to which he denied. Without any further evidence to connect Bell to the slaying, they were forced to release him. After that, the case went cold. In 2016, cold case detectives were going through old cases. Now that DNA evidence had advanced significantly since the 80s, the investigators were particularly hopeful in Nova Welsh's case. Her file contained a piece of gum that was used to secure the cupboard door closed that she had been found in, as well as potential DNA on the letter that had been mailed to police. They found that the DNA on the letter and the DNA on the chewing gum matched. Following that, they got a court order to secure DNA from Osmond Bell, and from there they compared the DNA. He was then arrested and had a trial a year later. The courts determined that the murder had not been premeditated and had been a result of Bell flying into a fit of rage when he discovered that Nova had been out with a new man. It was determined that he had written the letter and mailed it to police to divert attention off of him. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 12 years in prison. The now 60-year-old had been living as a free man for 34 years. Nova's mother, Lorna, said in her victim impact statement at the trial that Nova was gentle, loving, and full of life, and that the unfortunate and tragic loss of her life prevented her from seeing her children grow up as young adults. Number 2. Crystal Bezlanovich. It was a late evening on December 14, 1995, when 17-year-old Tracy Blazanovich told her boyfriend that she would go get something to eat. The two were living out of a North Temple motel in Salt Lake City, Utah. She told him she was going to the Circle K gas station, a short walk from the motel. By around midnight, her boyfriend Chris began to worry, as it was unlike Tracy to not come home. He went out to look for her, knocking on neighbors' doors and going down to the Circle K. However, he failed to report her missing. The following morning, 45 miles from Salt Lake City, at the Provo River, a man was hunting with his son when they came across a body. The woman was naked and had been brutally murdered. Several granite rocks around her body were covered in blood. The police started their investigation at the crime scene. There they took several rocks around her body as evidence. As her cause of death was blunt force trauma, they felt it was likely that one of the stones had been the murder weapon. They also found a pair of socks neatly folded on a rock near the body. Since the woman had no identification, they decided to appeal to the media and publish photos of her tattoos. She had 2 distinct tattoos, which police were hopeful someone would recognize. Meanwhile, Chris was still not able to locate Tracy. He had started combing through the news. It wasn't like Tracy to not return. He was fearful that something terrible had happened. His heart sank when a news segment began discussing a murdered Jane Doe and had displayed familiar tattoos. He contacted police to tell them that he knew who the Jane Doe was. Chris gave the police the only contact number he had for Tracy's family. Police called and made contact with Tracy's stepfather, who was devastated. They were only a few minutes into the conversation before a realization was made. The body they discovered was likely his younger stepdaughter, Crystal, not his daughter, Tracy. Crystal had a history of using her older half-sister's identity. Her stepfather told police that Crystal had dropped out of high school and was working as a prostitute. She had started getting mixed up in drugs at 15, and though her parents tried to get her help, she didn't want to make any changes to her lifestyle. Chris was brought in as a suspect. They felt that Chris had purposely lied about Crystal's identity, and they also felt it was suspicious that he hadn't reported her missing, and he also hadn't been honest about where she'd been that night. Crystal hadn't gone out for food that night. She went to work, and the police were back to square one, having no idea where to start their search. Chris was released as there was no evidence to link him to the murder. Police also determined that he had no motive. He had lied to protect Crystal, as she was underage, and he didn't tell officers she was a prostitute because he'd wanted the police to not treat her like she didn't deserve justice because of what she did for a living. Chris was also financially dependent on Crystal, and he didn't have a vehicle, so he alone couldn't have driven her the 45 miles away from Salt Lake City, where she had been found. Police turned their attention to another suspect, a local cab driver that had an unhealthy obsession with Crystal. However, this lead met a dead end when he was able to be eliminated forensically. As far as leads went, that was all they had. There was foreign male DNA found on a rock that was likely used to bludgeon Crystal, but there was only a partial profile. Officers did compare it to her boyfriend and the cab driver, but neither matched. In 2013, the case was reopened by Detective Todd Bonner. Bonner had been one of the first officers on the scene, and it was a case that would continue to haunt him throughout his career. He had heard of a new DNA collection device that did a better job of pulling DNA from porous objects like rocks. It was called the MVAC, and it essentially worked as a mini vacuum. The MVAC system deploys a unique combination of sterile solution spray and a vacuum that dramatically increases DNA uptake, which is a direct quote from the president of the company that manufactures them. It was a new advancement in technology, and Bonner was excited that it could possibly be used to help solve the case. Bonner had requisitioned one of the devices to be brought in to see what it could get from the rocks collected from the crime scene. Forensic scientists were very pleased when they discovered they had a full DNA profile located on the same rock they had found the partial DNA profile before. They ran the DNA through CODIS and got a hit. 46-year-old Joseph Michael Simpson had previously been convicted of murder and had been on parole at the time of Crystal's murder. Simpson had since relocated to Florida after Crystal's murder. Police were able to locate him living with his mother, and officers were flown out to follow him until they witnessed him discarding something with DNA on it. Simpson was a smoker, and it didn't take officers long to retrieve a cigarette butt he left behind. Investigators compared his DNA to the cigarette butt and DNA on the rock, and it was confirmed to match. He had never been considered a suspect before the DNA link. He was arrested in 2013, and it was Bonner who was able to handcuff Simpson. After 18 years, Detective Bonner was able to call Crystal's mother and tell her that he had arrested her daughter's killer. In 2016, he was sentenced to life in prison for aggravated murder, and he was denied any opportunity for parole. Number 3. Gail Barris. It was October 9th in 1988 in Battle Creek, Michigan, when Gail Barras disappeared. The 30-year-old single mother of 3 was last seen leaving a coffee shop with a dark-haired man around 3 or 4 a.m. Gail was a bartender and worked at 2 bars to make ends meet. She was known to often frequent this coffee shop after the bars closed on her way home. She was reported missing the following day when she failed to return home, but police didn't have much to go on. There was an account from a witness that she was seen arguing with 2 men near the coffee shop, but police weren't able to get an identification. 16 days later, Gail's body was discovered by hunters. She had been dumped on the side of the road in a neighboring county. She had been sexually assaulted and stabbed. Oddly, it seems that this case went cold for several decades before being opened again. 2 men were persons of interest, a man suspected of kidnapping and assaulting a different woman only a month prior to Gail's murder, Roger Plato, and his friend Richard Compton. That woman had survived, and based on her description, the police went to question Roger. When police arrived to bring him in, Plato fled and was shot and killed by officers. Plato died 2 weeks after Gail had disappeared, and before her body was even discovered. In 2018, Gail's son James called the Battle Creek PD to get a status update on his mother's murder. Detective Scott Marshall then reopened the file and began the investigation from scratch. He had Richard Compton's body exhumed. He had died in 2019, and detectives were able to get a DNA sample, but it didn't match the DNA that was recovered from Gail. Detectives then went to find Roger Plato's remains, but discovered that he, his mother, and his sister had all been cremated. They had records showing that blood was taken from Plato, but the sample wasn't with the rest of the evidence collected. In 2020, an officer with the County Sheriff's Department was doing an audit of evidence held in storage and discovered the blood sample taken from Plato as evidence. It seems there had been a miscommunication as to where the sample was supposed to go, but it had never been tested as it should have been in connection to Gail's cold case. The sample then was shipped to a lab for testing and was a positive match. In an unfortunate case of mismanaged paperwork, this case was finally closed after 33 years. No charges will be laid since Plato is deceased, but the case was able to be closed. Her son James thanked Detective Marshall for his dedication to his mother's case. He said, "It will be our way to close this chapter and gather with family and friends at her grave. It won't change the past, but it will take a weight off our shoulders to get this answered." Well, that will be it for this video. As always, please give this video a thumbs up if you like the content, and subscribe for more if you haven't already. If you've done all that and you want to support me and the channel, we have channel memberships. We also have merch and other goodies in the description box and links to all my socials. But until then, I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.